The Levy. This is bullshit. It doesn't take two of us to guard this levee. Nothing's going to happen. Especially not this time of night in the pouring rain. Don't know why we have to stand outside rather than sit in the cab. Could see just as bad from in than out. You just drove in today. Go ahead and get some sleep in the deuce. You look like shit. You look like shit. Nah. Remember, I'm kinda local. I got to sleep in my old bed at my mom's place last night. Go. Kay. Thanks, man. Yeah, whatever. And stop. Who's there? This levee is under the supervision of the National Guard. Turn around and return the way you came. Sorry, young man, but we can't do that. We don't want trouble, but we gotta do this. It's the only way, Mr. Hicks. What's your tag there, say? Adams? Which one of the Adams boys are you? Rick. Sir, I'm Rick. Who's with you? Just me and my dad, son. Just me and him. Why don't you put that gun down? Old Pops is with you? What are you two doing here? Let's just put that gun down, son. We'll explain. I can't do that, sir. Especially not with you holding that shotgun. You two need to stop bickering like old hens before I drop this box. That wouldn't be good for any of us. What's in the box? Dynamite. Dynamite? What the hell, Pops? Why are you bringing dynamite out here? Mr. Hicks? It's the only way, Ricky. The only way we don't lose everything. I don't understand. We gotta blow the levee before we lose everything. Our farm is set to get flooded out completely. I can't let you do that. I'm really sorry about the farm, but I can't let you do that. I've got orders to shoot, if necessary. We have to protect this levee. You wouldn't shoot me, would you, Ricky? After I coached you all those years in Little League and Pee Wee? I'm the one who coached the high school to state the year you won that fancy scholarship and hightailed it out of town. Come on now, let us through. No, I'm sorry. But you're talking about saving 1 or 2 farms. On the other side of this levee, there are over 50 homes with young families, with little kids asleep in their beds. Bullpucky boy, we heard the evacuation orders for the whole area on the radio. Ain't nobody there. They were even going to evacuate the old folks' home. This one keeps trying to put me in. We waited 2 days. Everybody should be gone. We ain't no murderers. That's exactly what you're about to be. If you've been listening, you know that evacuation didn't happen. My grandmother's down there right now, and all those families. What Amy's do you mean down didn't happen there? What? You said you've been listening to the radio. Well, power went out a bit after the evacuation orders were first announced. What do you mean it didn't happen? The levee up toward Summitburg on the other branch failed. It took out the island bridge. They can't evacuate. You said aim. Your gran is down at the old folks' home. Why didn't your ma bring her home? She should be home. Kara never did like your gran much. Figures she left her there. Your father is rolling in his grave. Hey, we tried Pops. She refused to leave. She insisted she can still help. Stubborn as a mule. That's your gran. Help with what, for God's sake? Just before the bridge went down, the med center went under. They saw that coming and had already evacuated everyone. Doc and a couple of nurses threw everything they could in the ambulance and set up in the nursing home. It's now the only medical facility in 3 counties. The Emergency Services Center went under, too. Grandma's running triage and dispatch from the night nurse station. Yup. That's definitely something she could do in her sleep. She was a Spitfire Army nurse, then spent probably 30 years running that dispatch before retiring. Well, holy. But our farm? Bill, hush. Private. Have your engineer types checked out this levee? Is it going to hold if it keeps raining like this? They're not sure. There's some work supposed to happen tomorrow if this rain lets up a bit, but it's mostly wait and see. You got a radio, private? One I can reach your gran on? I'm supposed to keep it on the guard channel, just for a minute. No one will know it was your radio, and not a personal one. Please. Okay. Here, Amy Adams. You there, sweetheart? It's Hank. Hank Hicks. You get off this emergency channel. This is for business. Just one quick ask, hun. Can you get word out for anyone willing to come by my place and drive the cows from the dairy barn across the road into the hills? I'm not there, and it's going to flood in real quick. My grandson, Mike, worked for you last summer. He's right here. I'll send him and anyone he thinks can help. Thank you, sweetheart. I gotta go. Dad, what was that about? We can be back in plenty of time to drive the cows out ourselves. If it even comes to that. Oh, it's come to that. Come on, Bill. We've got a levee to blow up. What do you mean, Pops? No, Dad. No. We'll lose everything. More than everything. What are you guys talking about? I'm talking about taking some of the pressure off this here levee to make sure your gran and all those folks stay safe. What are you talking about? He's talking about blowing the private levee in our back pasture. Flash flooding the whole farm. Darn right I am. Let's go. No! We can deal with some flooding, but that would wipe out everything. Son, it is still my farm, not yours. We'll lose crops. We'll lose equipment. We might well lose buildings too. But the land ain't going nowhere. And with the cows up in the hills, there'll still be a herd. You can use all the different property and crop and equipment insurance money to rebuild with all the fancy modern thingamabobs you keep going on about. Insurance. Dad, why the hell were we up here meaning to blow up this levee if we have insurance? I ain't never made an insurance claim, and I wasn't about to start if I could help it. Wait, what do you mean I can use the money? You mean we, right? Nope. I'm thinking I'll move myself into that old folks' home with his pretty grandma and leave you to it. Let's go blow a levee. High hopes in the rain. Sitting in a chair in the living room, Dave wonders, I know that I have to do something drastic, or nothing will change in our relationship. But what can that be? I was foolish and selfish. I am aware of that now. How do I undo it? He walks to the window and looks out. as if the act would give him an answer. As he scans the surroundings, he sees that it is raining. It is what his grandfather would have called a doozy of a storm. Then he gets an idea. He decides to follow it through, though it might just be foolish to the max. But he feels that it has to be tried. It is desperation time. He goes into the bedroom and puts on what is well known to friends and family to be his favorite sweater, blue with a big maple leaf on the front. Then he goes outside, getting soaked in mere seconds. He thinks once more about the foolish thing that he did slightly more than a week ago. At the very least, this will be yet another punishment, one that he is imposing on himself, one that he feels he deserves. But his hope is that it will change the failing state of his marriage, the event that harmed his marriage. It was a Saturday night, and as usual for this time of year, he was watching a hockey game in which his beloved Toronto Maple Leafs were playing. It was the third period, and the game was tied 3-3. The Leafs had been behind, but had made a comeback to tie the game. Their opposition, the New York Rangers, had just received a tripping penalty. The phone rang, and he wondered whether or not to answer it. But he could still watch the game while listening on his phone. It was his wife, Eva. She had been out to watch a movie with her best friends. They lived on the other side of town, so they were taking a bus to go back home. For her, there was an hour-long walk. There was no bus that would take her home. She did not feel like walking, as it had been a long day for her, and there were some thick clouds approaching where she was standing. She asked Dave to pick her up at the theater so that she would not have to walk home. His reply was definitely not what she wanted to hear. He told her that he was watching the Leaf game, and it was tied in the third period, with the Rangers just getting a penalty. He could not possibly abandon the game at this stage. She was stunned by his response and ended the call on the phone. She did so with anger and energy, banging her phone on her upper leg. Both of them knew that there was no bus that went near to their home. When she went to call a taxi cab, she discovered that her phone was no longer working. She would have to walk. And as she did, the expected rainfall began. Very heavy it was. By the time she reached home, she was completely drenched and very, very angry with her husband. Her first words to him when she finally arrived at their home was, "I think that you prefer your beloved Leafs to me. I hope that they lost." He was going to say that they won 4-3, something that he had jumped up and cheered about at the time, but was astute enough not to do so. When he looked at her drenched person and angry face, he knew that he was in deep trouble. The next day, which was Sunday, they barely spoke to each other. And when dinner time rolled around, and he asked her whether they might go out to have dinner in a local place that they both liked. Her only reply was, "I guess there was no Leafs game tonight, or you would not have asked me. I'm making my own dinner tonight, and you can make your own damn dinner." Over the next few days, there was little said between them, other than the bare necessities, barked out in very short sentences. This is what had led him to the desperate gesture of going out in the rain while wearing his maple leaf sweater. He knew that she would soon to be in the living room as her favorite television show was on. The television had its back to the window, through which the front yard could be seen. She came into the room and turned on the television. Dave felt that she would eventually be seeing him and his soaking wet treasure. A few minutes passed by, and she did not appear to see him, so he walked towards the window until he was only a step away. He wanted to knock on the window, but decided against it. After about 10 minutes, she stood up. He reckoned that there was a commercial on, and that she was going to the kitchen to get something to eat or drink. He had heated up a frozen pizza for his own supper, and had eaten it alone, as he had done every night since the Saturday of her drenching. When she returned to the living room, a glass of wine in her hand, she suddenly saw him, wet sweater and all. She put the glass down and walked towards the window. Knowing him well after 5 years of marriage, she recognized one of his symbolic gestures. The fact that he had worn his leaf sweater while out in the rain had meaning that she clearly understood. She went quickly to the front door, opened it, and in a friendlier manner than she had used in speaking to him in days, she shouted out to him, "Come in right now, you moron," an affectionate term shared between them. When he came inside, she said to him, "I would hug you, you moron, but I don't want to get wet. Take the sweater off so I can put it in the dryer and put something dry on." He stripped off the soaking garment and handed it to her. She grabbed it and took it downstairs to the dryer. He stood there, half naked, with a big smile on his face. When she returned to the living room, she returned his smile with a smile of her own. He then said, "I was selfish on Saturday. I am so sorry about that. You are way more important to me than a hockey team could ever be. You are in first place. They are a distant second." This was followed by a mutually engaging hug. Paranoid delusions. The wind buffeted him wildly, and the rain hammered down relentlessly. He was walking near the local creek, which was connected to the suburb's storm water drains. But this particular area was just rocks, shrubs, trees, and water. Hastily, he made his way down to the muddy stream, which, at this time, was pitch black, and stepped into the water. This would be a sort of baptism. He descended into the water and dunked himself in it. It was too shallow to cover his entire body. So he splashed some water onto his head. Now he was ready for whatever this night held in store for him. As he ascended the side of the creek, he saw before him the well-trimmed grass soccer field, lit by down lights on the large steel poles surrounding it, and began to stagger in its direction. Soon, he was standing in the middle of the field, wet from the downpour. He felt alone. Not physically alone. There were cars going up and down the road next to the field. But as far as he knew, nobody knew he was out here. But strangely, he saw someone approaching in the light. It was a middle-aged man. Thunder boomed across the field. "What are you doing out here?" "Best to be truthful. I'm waiting for the world to end." "Have you come to join me?" Lightning lit up the sky. "Yes, I'm out here for the same reason." They both turned and looked at the houses, whose steel back fences met the side of the field. "Do you think we're the only ones who know?" The rain belted down on them both. "I think so." The thunder from the lightning rumbled heavy and hard, as more great arcs lit up the sky, and the rain became heavier. The man looked at him through the gelatinous downpour. "How did you get here?" He replied in a frantic rush. "I've been walking through this night down many different paths. I honestly couldn't tell you how I got here. I just kept on walking. Eventually, I hit the creek over there, and then I came to this field." The wind battered them, causing the rain to hit them in an angular fashion, directly on their face. The man came up to him, soaking wet, and put a hand on his shoulder. "Tell me your name. We need to pass the time somehow." The rain began to subside, and the wind became calmer. He responded, "My name's Jack. Who are you anyway?" The man looked at the ground, his hand still on his shoulder. "I'm David. Tell me everything you know about why you're here. Tell me everything you know about the world ending." He sat down, and the man sat with him. "I left my car when the radio started sounding funny. Just got out and left it where it was. It wasn't just the radio. I felt like the car was going to lock me in any second. I walked and walked, and when I got to some shops, I heard people laughing at me, but I just ignored them and opened the Bible. I was sitting on a concrete barrier, and the pages just started to turn, slowly at first, but then faster and faster, till it stopped at the book of Revelation. Ah, the book of Revelation, the prophecy of the end times. But don't you think that maybe it was just the wind? Jack's face tightened, and his teeth gritted. "It was a sign. I know a sign when I see one." A loud thunder crack shook the earth. He began to pace back and forth, and then turned to face David, his voice trembling despite his efforts, words spilling out too fast, fingers twitching against the damp grass. "The end of the world is when God returns his Son, Jesus, back to the world to judge everyone. everything great we have built, all the technology we have created, it won't make any difference. Everything will be destroyed to be remade again. All the wicked will be sent to hell, while those who believe will be given new bodies and will live forever with God, Jesus, in their midst. I see, said David. I'm not going to debate your beliefs with you. I respect your choice. But tell me, what made you think it's happening right now? He began to pace again. It started as a feeling. I was feeling so amped up. And then I saw the pages turn on my Bible. And then this crazy storm started happening. And I've had this horrible feeling, like 1,000 people are watching me at once. If I close my eyes, I can almost see them looking at me. And then, when I was in my car, I heard people singing my name. I don't know why they were doing that. Maybe they want me to think I'm special. So I'll think I am the Messiah, but I'd be a false Messiah, so I can't let them control me, David replied softly. I can see there is a lot going on for you. Let's break this down. So, the storm made you feel more alert, more vigilant. The way you said it before, it was as if your feelings created the storm. But don't you think the storm might have been what, in your words, amped you up, and not the other way around? The wind became gentle. He continued, his voice calm and reassuring. And the feeling of being watched. This could be paranoia. Many people who become paranoid feel they are being watched. And when you heard people singing your name, are you sure that's what you heard? Do you think maybe you misheard? Or perhaps you're hallucinating? In any case, you left your car running in the middle of the road. I hope it hasn't been stolen. His shoulders slumped. The clouds were clearing, and a few stars were visible through the soccer field lights. Everything you're saying could be true, but if I can't trust my own feelings, how can I know anything? I'm a Christian. I believe God can talk to me. Is God deceiving me? Silence descended upon them, with only a faint breeze gusting back and forth. David smiled. Listen, I respect your beliefs, and I'm sure that there is something in those beliefs that allows for God to communicate with you in certain ways. But let me tell you something. He opened his wallet and pulled out a card. I am not actually here for the end of the world. I'm here to find you. I'm a psychologist in the public mental health care system. Your parents have reported you missing. And I'm here because your phone allowed us to track you. That might sound like a breach of privacy, but believe me, it's in your own interest. Right now, I believe you are mentally unwell, and I want to help you. Look at the both of us out here, soaked from head to toe. I need you to follow me over to my car so we can take you somewhere where we have medicine that can help calm you down. It's going to be hard at first. The medication isn't perfect, But if you keep taking it, you will get used to the side effects. And then things like this won't happen again. Hopefully. He looked down, wondering at everything he had just heard. How do I know you're telling the truth? How do I know you're going to take me somewhere and torture me? You know the world is filled with people who hate Christians. How do I know you're not a Satanist and part of a plan to make me lose my faith? Tears began to fall from his eyes. I believe that God can get me through anything. But honestly, I don't know if I could hold up under torture. The wind began to pick up again. David's face took on a look of empathy. All I can say is that I promise I'm here to help you. If God is going to communicate with you, it will help if you're thinking straight. And that's what we're going to try to do. Help you to be able to think without succumbing to delusions and paranoia. I've seen many cases like yours, and I really do feel for the people we treat. Will you come with me? He felt a sense of resignation. All right, I'll come with you. Though the ground was soaked, he could feel the firmness of the earth beneath his feet. The two of them walked off the field. The air was now completely still, and crickets could be heard chirping in the night air. Lost hope. January 20th, 2025. Entry 1. It all happened so fast. All I could grab was my journal and a few pens. Alarms began blaring, and Dad rushed me. Mom and David down into a bunker? I don't know when we got a bunker or why, but it was deep under our house. It's spooky down here. One light source in the center of the room, only 2 mattresses, and the rest of the space is full of wiggatons and jugs of water. I'm not sure how long we're going to be down here, so I figured journaling would be fun, though no one's answering my questions. Dad looks more serious than usual. He's been checking his pocket watch since we got here. Mom hasn't stopped pacing around, and David the deadbeat sat right on a mattress when we got down here. I don't want to be the only kid down here, so hopefully it only lasts a few days. January 23rd, 2025. Entry 2. The alarms and sirens from above finally stopped today. They made it hard to sleep, but it wasn't like it was easy to sleep in the first place. The beds were made for a kid half my size, and me and Mom had to share, so it was cramped. I still don't know why we are down here, but it's looking like it's going to be a little longer than a few days. It smells down here. The hole we potty in is deep, but the smell still sneaks up and fills the room with stench. And I'm not a fan of the food. I preferred the terrible food we got from the middle school. Then these cans. I wonder what my friends are doing. I miss them. January 28th, 2025. Entry 3. I hear people above. They sound sick and like they need help. Bangs and booms, groaning and wheezing. These sounds echoing through the bunker. But Dad says we can't help them. But if they're outside, Why are we trapped in here? Also, David keeps looking at me funny. I don't like it. It ruins our card games. February 1st, 2025. Entry 4. I would have been such a great weather girl. I was always jealous of the ladies on TV. They were so pretty. But I can always guess the weather in the bunker. A high chance of inhaling bodily fumes, followed by boredom for the entire day. Stay safe, folks. It looks like this has no mention of ending anytime soon. No time soon. February 3rd, 2025. Entry 5. I got curious. This bunker didn't just appear. Dad must have built it. And that means he knew something. Knew this was coming. Why didn't he warn us? He has a small leather journal. Keeps it tucked inside his blazer pocket. I know I shouldn't, but I need to see what's inside. February 7th, 2025. Entry 6. I started bleeding. I didn't know what to do. I just kept crying and crying. My mom was trying to comfort and explain what was happening, but I thought I was dying. It didn't help that David kept looking at the stain on my pants. I was so embarrassed. I hate him. I hate having to be around him, and he won't stop looking at me. I wish I could just vanish. February 8th, 2025. Entry 7. I stayed up while everyone was sleeping. Dad doesn't sleep with his blazer on, so I was able to grab the journal and look through it. None of it made sense, though. There were just symbols scribbled all through the journal, but I've seen him writing in it. Why draw these symbols? What does it mean? I also think David caught me snooping, because when I walked over to his and Dad's bed, he was shifting around. If he tells I don't know what Dad will do. February 10th, 2025. Entry 8. David never said anything about the journal, so I think I'm in the clear. I'm becoming direly bored. David sits on his bed all day. Mom keeps replaying solitaire, and Dad is just checking his watch and journaling. No conversation is killing me. There's nothing new, no fresh air, and I never know if it's nighttime or not. If this is survival, is it even worth it? February 10th, 2025. Entry 9. I climbed to the top of the ladder to see if I could hear anything. I almost fell down because the ladder was old and the bars shifted. That fall could have been really bad. Most of the noises from above had stopped, and so it's just been silence. But when I pressed my ear to the hatch, I could feel vibrations, almost like a buzzing, like a wasp. There's still a world out there, I think. February 12th, 2025. Entry 9. I asked Dad about the buzzing, since now it's loud enough to be slightly heard from in the bunker. He, of course, didn't answer me, but he looked concerned by me asking. I couldn't take it. He had just stared at the hatch and then gave me his pocket watch. February. So much has happened. I lost my pens, so I couldn't write anything. It all feels so frozen. Nothing is moving anymore. Nothing's the same. My mind has run out of thoughts. The noises above are muffled. The only thing I feel is my heart bumping in my chest. Dad stopped checking his watch. He no longer writes anymore. I miss showering. My body is so dirty, even though I scrub so much. No matter how hard I try, the dirt won't come off. I catch my dad looking at the ceiling every day now. He's probably thinking what we both have been thinking this entire time. Is it safe to go up yet? He always looks scared whenever the thought crosses his mind. I can see it. His dread of what's to come. Why won't he tell me? Is it so terrible? Maybe I should find out for myself. It would be better than being in this casket. I'm tired of soup. I'm so tired. I want him to hug me. I want a hug so bad. It's been so long since I've been hugged. But I can't. I can't accept his comfort. It's hurting him to know he can't help me. A hug from Mom would've. She gave the best hugs. The buzzings never stopped before. So many continuous days with that buzzing in my ear. It's finally gone. Something changed. I have to take this chance. Dad would try to stop me if he knew. I have to do it now while he's asleep. I know you're reading this now, Dad. I love you. I wasn't strong enough. Forgive me. Strange paint. Deborah had always been a solitary artist, pouring her heart and soul into her work in a dimly lit studio that smelled of turpentine and linseed oil. Her latest masterpiece was a vibrant canvas depicting a mystical forest, alive with creatures that seemed to shimmer and dance under the flickering light of a nearby candle. As she painted the final stroke, the colors swirled and shimmered, as if the very essence of life had been captured within the frame. Unbeknownst to her, the painting was not just a piece of art. It was a portal to another realm, one that thrummed with whispers and secrets waiting to be uncovered. One stormy night, a curious art collector named Harold stumbled upon Deborah's gallery. He was immediately drawn to her latest creation, the forest, alive with colors that seemed to pulse in the dim light. Despite the warnings of the gallery owner, who sensed an unsettling energy emanating from the painting, Harold insisted on purchasing it. He felt an inexplicable connection to the artwork, as if it called out to him, promising wonders beyond his imagination. That night, he hung the painting in his study, entranced by its beauty and unaware of the darkness lurking within. Harold could not look away from the painting as the clock struck midnight. The figures within it, elusive woodland creatures and ethereal beings, began to shift and move, their eyes glinting with mischief and allure. They beckoned him closer, their whispers growing louder, promising secrets of the universe and glimpses of forgotten dreams. Each night, Harold returned to the painting, his heart racing with excitement and fear as he felt himself slipping deeper into its enchanting world. Days turned into weeks, and Harold's life began to unravel. He neglected his work, and isolation became his companion. Friends and family expressed their concern, but he brushed them aside, captivated by the beauty and mystery of the painting. In the quiet hours of the night, he would sit before the canvas, losing track of time as the figures danced and twirled, drawing him into their virulent realm where reality blurred into fantasy. The whispers became more urgent, more insistent, wrapping around him like a warm embrace. One fateful night, driven by an insatiable curiosity, Harold reached out to touch the canvas. The moment his fingers brushed against the surface, a surge of energy coursed through him, and he felt himself pulled into the painting. The colors enveloped him, swirling around him like a tempest, and in an instant, he was no longer in his study, but standing in the very heart of the enchanted forest. The creatures surrounded him, their laughter echoing like chimes in the wind, and he felt a sense of belonging that he had never known before. As days turned into nights in this new reality, Harold became a part of the painting, a mere shadow of his former self. He danced with the creatures, forgetting the life he had left behind, lost in a world where time held no meaning. Yet, deep within him, a flicker of awareness remained, a whisper of the life he had abandoned. The forest, once a place of wonder, transformed into a labyrinth of shadows, and the creatures he had once adored began to reveal their true nature, deceptive and sinister. In the end, Harold understood too late that the enchanting world of Deborah's painting was a trap, a seductive illusion that fed on his very essence. As he stood among the figures, now twisted and grotesque, he realized he had become one of them, a mere echo of a man who had once been alive. The painting hung in his study, a beautiful facade hiding the darkness within, whispering secrets to anyone who dared to gaze upon it, inviting them to join him in the eternal dance of despair. One rainy afternoon, a friend of Harold's, Claire, knocked on the door of his house. She had grown increasingly worried about him since he had purchased the painting. Harold hadn't returned her calls in weeks, and she felt an unsettling urgency to check on him in person. As she entered, the air felt thick, charged with an energy that sent a shiver down her spine. "Harold!" she called, her voice echoing through the dimly lit hallway. There was no response, only the sound of raindrops tapping against the window. Claire moved cautiously toward the study, her heart racing. The door creaked open, revealing the painting that had captivated Harold's very soul. She gasped as she stepped inside, the vibrant colors of the forest contrasting sharply with the shadows that loomed over the room. The painting seemed to pulse with life as Claire approached it, and she felt an inexplicable pull, as if the figures within were beckoning her to join them. But something was off. The forest looked darker than she remembered, and the laughter of the creatures now sounded like haunting whispers. "Harold!" she called again, her voice trembling. Suddenly, she noticed a flicker of movement in the corner of her eye. It was Harold, standing eerily still before the painting, his gaze fixed on it as if he were entranced. She rushed to him, placing a hand on his shoulder. "Harold, are you okay? You've been gone for so long. I was worried sick." His head slowly turned to her, but his eyes were vacant, as if he were staring through her rather than at her. "Claire," he murmured, his voice distant. "You have to see. It's beautiful here. You can join me. We can be free." Fear gripped Claire as she looked back at the painting, where the creatures now gazed hungrily at her, their smiles widening. "Harold, this isn't right. You need to come back with me," she pleaded, shaking him gently, but he shook his head, a hint of desperation flickering in his eyes. "You don't understand. This is where I belong now. The forest. It holds everything I've ever wanted. You can't leave it. You have to stay." His voice grew softer, almost pleading. "You have to join us." Claire's heart raced as she realized the truth. The painting had ensnared Harold, twisting his mind and spirit, and now it was trying to lure her in as well. She took a step back, her instincts screaming at her to escape. "No, Harold! You have to fight it. This isn't you." At that moment, the creatures in the painting began to writhe and stretch, their forms becoming more grotesque, their laughter turning into a cacophony of chilling echoes. They reached out with elongated fingers, as if trying to break free from the confines of the canvas. The air grew heavy, thick, with a malevolent energy that made it difficult to breathe. "Join us, Claire," they chorused, their voices a twisted melody that tugged at her heart. "It's beautiful here. You'll never feel pain again." With a surge of resolve, Claire grabbed Harold's arm and pulled him away from the painting. "No, you're stronger than this. Remember who you are," she shouted, her voice breaking through the haze that enveloped him. For a brief moment, Harold blinked, confusion flickering across his face. "Claire? What's happening?" "Just breathe," she urged, her grip tightening around his arm. "We have to get out of here." The creatures within the painting howled in fury, their vibrant colors darkening as they sensed their prey slipping away. The shadows in the room twisted and churned, threatening to swallow them whole. Claire pulled harder, dragging Harold away from the painting, and as they stumbled backward, the connection between him and the canvas began to fray. With one last desperate attempt, the creatures lunged forward, their claws reaching for Harold. But just as they were about to grasp him, Claire shouted, "No!" and yanked him out of the study, slamming the door shut behind them. They stumbled into the hallway, gasping for breath, the oppressive weight of the painting's energy dissipating. Claire turned to Harold, who was finally coming back to himself, confusion and fear etched on his face. "What just happened?" he gasped, shaking as if waking from a nightmare. "You were lost in that painting," Claire said, her voice trembling. "It was trying to take you, to keep you forever. But we escaped. You're safe now." As relief washed over Harold, he looked back at the closed door of his study, where the painting hung silently, its colors muted in the absence of his gaze. "I didn't realize. I thought I was free." Claire placed a comforting hand on his shoulder. "You were caught in its spell, but you're stronger than it. We need to get rid of that painting before it claims anyone else." With newfound determination, they returned to the study, where the painting seemed to loom larger, its colors still swirling with a hypnotic allure. Together, they hatched a plan to destroy it, to sever the bond it had formed with Harold, and ensure that no one else would fall victim to its seductive trap. As they prepared to confront the darkness within the canvas, they knew that the battle was far from over. The forest might have tried to claim Harold, but together they would fight to reclaim his freedom and banish the malevolent forces that lurked behind the vibrant colors. The whispers from the painting grew louder, but this time they would not be silenced. The Enchanted Minds canvas. Ella carefully added the finishing touches to her painting, layering vibrant strokes of green amid the earthy browns and faded tans of fall. The scene was one she had sketched in the park days ago, a quiet landscape draped in the remnants of late autumn, the air crisp with the bite of encroaching winter. As her brush danced across the canvas, her mind drifted to the frozen pond she had sat across from, its surface resembling a sheet of shattered glass reflecting the pale autumn sky. Then something shifted. A sudden eerie chill prickled her skin, creeping over her arms despite the warmth of her studio. The faint scent of damp earth and decaying leaves filled her nose, so vivid it nearly overwhelmed her senses. A sharp gust of wind brushed past her cheek, biting at the tip of her nose. She gasped. Her fingers trembled around the brush as the sensation deepened, no longer just a figment of her imagination. It felt real. The world around her wavered, its edges blurring as if reality itself had begun to ripple beneath her fingertips. Ella's heart raced. Her hand wasn't just gliding over the painting, it was sinking into it. Her studio began to shift, the walls dissolving into streaks of color, and then, in an instant, she was there. The park looked exactly as she had painted it. Frost-laced grass, undressed trees swaying, and a frozen pond glistening under the pale sunlight. The icy air sent a chill up her spine as the wind whispered through brittle branches. Her heart pounded. How am I here? Before she could take a step forward, the sensation snapped, sharp and sudden, like a rubber band stretched to its limit. The world around her rushed past in a dizzying blur, and in the blink of an eye, she was yanked back to her studio. Ella glanced around, her breath unsteady as she tried to ground herself. Her gaze settled back on her painting, looming more vibrant, more lifelike, almost as if it had absorbed some essence of reality itself. Her eyes then fell to the floor. Scattered across the hardwood were remnants of dead grass and brittle leaves, the very same ones that had lined the park's frozen ground. Her pulse thundered in her ears. Then, like a whisper from the past, a memory surfaced. One she had long convinced herself was nothing more than a dream. This had happened before. A few months after waking from her coma, she had felt the same eerie pull, like an inexplicable shift between worlds. But she had dismissed it, blaming it on the lingering haze of recovery, a mere figment of her imagination. But it wasn't just her imagination, was it? She had seen it happen, and more. It started subtly. Cats stretching, birds ruffling their feathers, shifting within the canvas. With each incident, her paintings became eerily lifelike, earning her recognition and eventually her own gallery exhibition. But this was different. This time, she hadn't just brought something to life. She had been pulled into it. A shiver ran down her spine. The cold from that autumn landscape still clinging to her bones. She turned back to the painting, a strange weight settling in her chest. Whatever was happening to her, it wasn't just art anymore. It was something deeper, something more powerful, and she had no idea how to control it. 5 years ago. Anxious and impatient, Ella paced the hospital, her walker tracing an endless figure 8 of corridors. She wanted out. She was bored, exhausted, and angry, tired of the constant checkups, the intrusive monitoring, the way doctors spoke about her as if she weren't in the room. Most of all, she was tired of feeling like the world had moved on without her. Her classmates had graduated, their social media filled with college acceptance letters, beach trips, and late-night adventures. Meanwhile, she was stuck here, relearning how to walk, how to hold a fork without her hands trembling. how to exist in a life that had been paused for a little over 6 months. For half a year, Elizabeth Ella Larson had been lost in a silent void, trapped in a coma she had no memory of falling into. One moment, she was on the bus ride home from a school field trip, laughing with her friends. The next, darkness. Her class's bus narrowly avoided a catastrophic collision with a tractor trailer. The truck driver, having fallen asleep at the wheel, veered into the bus's lane, forcing the driver to make a desperate maneuver to prevent disaster. While most students escaped with minor injuries, the incident took a more serious toll on a few. Tragically, the bus driver suffered a heart attack at the scene, and 2 students sustained severe head injuries, slipping into comas, Ella being one of them. When Ella woke, the piercing brightness of hospital lights and the rhythmic beeping of monitors shattered the stillness, as if time had paused. But the world hadn't waited for her. Her face was already all over social media, her story shared and reshared by curious classmates. Though her parents and hospital staff tried to shield her from the media, it was inevitable. Visiting friends posted selfies and status updates, ensuring her return wasn't just her own. Initially, the attention was overwhelming. Luckily, to Ella's relief, the novelty eventually faded. Only a few persistent reporters and social media diehards still sought a glimpse of the girl who emerged from a coma. Meanwhile, life resumed for everyone else, leaving Ella to realize she hadn't just lost 6 months. She had lost so much more. Pep rallies, graduation, and spring break. Before the accident, Ella had been an exceptional artist for her age. She had spent years perfecting her craft, creating paintings so lifelike they seemed to breathe on the canvas. Art was her passion, her escape, and hopefully her future. She had applied to countless schools, dreaming of the day she would walk through the doors of an art academy. But the more she recovered, the more she sensed that something had changed. A strange energy pulsed through her hands, as if the accident had left behind more than just scars. At first, she had brushed the feeling off as nothing more than a lingering effect of her recovery. However, when she finally picked up a pencil again, her art would begin to capture more than just reality. Hoping to lift her spirits, her parents brought her sketchbook. The physical therapist agreed and encouraged her to draw, believing it might restore her fine motor skills quickly. But the first time she tried sketching, her fingers, once so steady, betrayed her. The once effortless strokes turned to jagged, clumsy lines, chicken scratch from a toddler's hand. Frustrated and disheartened, she shoved the sketchbook aside and refused to touch it for days. Then, one afternoon, on impulse, she picked it up again. She began sketching the vase of flowers that sat on her hospital windowsill, a gift from her art teacher. The sunlight caught the delicate curve of a lily petal just right, making it the perfect subject to draw. As she sketched the details, a strange warmth spread through her fingertips. As Ella became completely immersed in her sketch, her mind wholly focused, the air around her began to shift. The scent of fresh lilies began to overwhelm her senses, far more intense than before. Startled, she looked up. Her breath caught. The real flowers had changed. The lilies that were half closed were now in full bloom, mirroring the one she had just finished drawing. Her sketchbook slipped from her hands, landing with a soft thud on the hospital bed. Ella stared at her fingers, watching as dust particles swirled in the afternoon light. Except they weren't just dust. The air around her shimmered, an iridescent glow clinging to her skin. She blinked, her heart pounding. It had to be a hallucination, a trick of her recovering mind, just a dream, she told herself, while her eyes were still fixated on her hands. Yet deep down, she knew the truth. Something within her had been unlocked. Awakened by the sun's warmth, Ella sat up, squinting against the bright light streaming through her bedroom window. Despite the winter chill, the morning sun cast an ironic touch of warmth to the frigid 30-degree day. As she shook off the haze of sleep, the sharp beeping of her alarm clock jolted her fully awake, a nagging reminder of the day ahead. She was scheduled to inspect the gallery rooms in the newly opened art building downtown, ensuring her pieces were displayed exactly as she envisioned. Tomorrow marked her debut exhibition, the moment she had worked toward for years. Excitement and nerves twisted in her chest. It was finally here, and she wasn't about to leave anything to chance. Silencing the alarm, Ella swung her legs over the bed and took a steadying breath. She grabbed the outfit she had picked out the day before, sophisticated yet artistic, the perfect balance. Heading towards the bathroom, she caught a glimpse of her latest work, leaning against the wall, a hypnotic twilight scene of Pittsburgh's skyline, reflected in the Monongahela River. The river seemed to shimmer, as if a ripple might break across the surface if she stared too long. Nope. Nope. Not today, she muttered, quickly looking away. No incident, especially not tomorrow. But what if it happened again? What if a painted river overflowed, flooding the gallery? Or a sudden gust of wind swept through, touching the viewers? And what if they realized what she could do? She pushed the thought aside, taking a deep breath as she splashed water on her face. She needed to focus on the gallery, on today. No distractions. She'd been careful all week. Still, the memory of being transported to the park unnerved her. Nothing that extreme had happened since, but the occasional ripple of water or a bird nearly lifting off the canvas was enough to make her uneasy. After getting dressed, she made a quick breakfast. Her phone buzzed on the kitchen counter. It was a text from her best friend, Rosalie. "Good luck, Ella, and relax. You've got this. See you tomorrow at the show." Ella smiled at the words, even though her stomach was in knots. She typed back, "Thanks. I'll see you tomorrow." Her phone buzzed again almost immediately. This time, the gallery curator. Just a reminder, the final walkthrough is scheduled for 11 a.m. Bring any additional pieces you'd like to include in the collection. The gallery is confident your work will be a hit. Ella inhaled and exhaled slowly. Everything would be fine. She grabbed the two paintings, the one of Pittsburgh reflected in the Monongahela, and another tucked behind it, along with her purse and keys. By the time she arrived at the gallery, her nerves had settled into quiet determination. The venue was stylish and contemporary, with high ceilings and whitewashed walls, perfect for showcasing her work. A gallery handler took the paintings she'd brought, placing them in their designated room, while a marketing assistant guided her through the maze of exhibits. Each piece displayed exactly as she had envisioned. She moved through the gallery, carefully inspecting each painting, occasionally adjusting placements to perfect the flow. Her twilight scene of Pittsburgh's skyline sat front and center, positioned so the lighting captured every reflective detail in the water. But as she stared at the shimmering river, a familiar pull stirred in her chest. No, not now. Not here. She forced herself to look away, focusing on the next piece. A series of landscapes inspired by the city's parks. Under the gallery lights, the colors felt more vibrant, almost alive, as if one could stride in. But as she neared a painting of a dense, forested path, the pull returned, subtle yet unsettling. Her hand trembled as she reached for the wall to steady herself. She couldn't risk it. Not here. Not today. Why was this starting again? Was it because she was tense and anxious, trying to suppress the sensation? She shifted her focus to the gallery curator and marketing assistant, who had been quietly observing her. Forcing a smile, she said, "Everything looks great. I think we're all set for tomorrow." "Fantastic. Everything will be perfect. We just need you to review the virtual gallery site and give your approval," the curator said cheerfully. Ella nodded, her thoughts swirling. Tomorrow would be okay. She just had to keep her focus. If she could get through today without any mishaps, then tomorrow, the grand opening, she would be able to maintain control. She just had to make sure nothing came to life from her paintings or whisked anyone away. The next day arrived in a flash. Her art exhibition was set to begin at 1 p.m., and she needed to be at the gallery by 11 a.m. to handle any last-minute details, do a final walkthrough, and prepare for the guests. Last night, after returning home to unwind, she had felt the urge to draw, but she forced herself not to. She needed to rest, to stay focused. She didn't want to tempt the growing power within her. By the time Ella stepped into the gallery, the air was rich with the scent of fresh flowers, the sweetness of wine, and the faint trace of new paint. The space had transformed overnight. Elegant spotlights bathed each painting in a soft glow, making the artwork seem even more alive. Small, stylish benches were arranged throughout the room, inviting visitors to linger. Soon, guests began to arrive, mingling with glasses of wine in hand, their murmurs forming a low hum of anticipation. Ella smoothed her dress, a beautiful wrap dress with bell sleeves, the fabric printed with an abstract design from one of her early paintings. Her friend Rosalie had helped bring it to life, sewing it into a wearable piece of art. Ella's hands trembled slightly as she scanned the room, watching how people responded to her work. Rosalie was the first to spot her, letting out an excited squeal as she rushed over. "You did it, Ella. Look at all these people. And your work. It's absolutely breathtaking under these lights. You've been busy over the years. Just look at all these paintings." She squeezed Ella's arms, beaming. "How are you feeling?" Ella forced a smile, letting out a nervous chuckle. "Excited, nervous, and definitely a little terrified." Rosalie laughed reassuringly. "Totally normal. Just breathe, okay? This is the moment you've been waiting for. And it's happening." Before Ella could respond, a voice cut through their conversation. "Ella Larson." She turned to see a distinguished older man with long salt and pepper hair and sharp eyes behind wire-framed glasses. He extended a hand. "Hello, I'm George Morgan, art critic for the Tribune. I must say, your work is astonishing. There's a vibrancy and realism here that I rarely see in paintings these days." Ella's heart pounded against her ribs. "Thank you, Mr. Morgan. That means a lot." She smiled, trying to keep her nerves in check. His gaze lingered on the twilight of Pittsburgh painting. This one in particular. It's mesmerizing. It almost feels as though the water is truly moving. How did you achieve such a remarkable effect? Ella swallowed hard. "Oh, I tend to get in a zone," she said with a small, nervous smile. "A lot of detail, layering, and finding the right mix of paint." Morgan nodded approvingly. "Enchanting, almost lifelike." As the critic moved on, Rosalie elbowed Ella subtly. "See? You're already impressing the media." Ella barely had time to absorb the moment before Dina, the gallery owner, approached with an eager expression. "Ella, would you mind coming with me? The guests would love to hear a few words from you. Some are already interested in purchasing your work. Just a short welcome and a bit about your inspiration, okay?" Ella's stomach clenched, but she nodded. This was part of the dream, right? Taking a deep breath, she followed Dina to a small platform at the center of the room. As the soft clinking of glasses faded and guests turned to face her, Dina introduced her. Ella steadied herself and took a deep breath. "Hello, everyone. My name is Elizabeth Larson, but most people call me Ella. First, I want to thank Dina, the gallery owner, and Jessie, the curator, for giving my art the honor of being the first exhibit in this beautiful new space. And of course, thank you all for being here tonight." She continued her speech, her voice growing steadier with each word. When she finished, a soft round of applause filled the room. Ella exhaled, a wave of relief washing over her. But just as she stepped down, a ripple of movement caught her eye. The twilight river. The light against the canvas shimmered. The water within the painting trembled, as if stirred by a real breeze. Ella's breath hitched. No, not now. Please, not now. Panic surged through her, but she forced herself to focus, willing the movement to stop. Every ounce of concentration was poured into holding it still. Her heartbeat thundered in her ears. She clenched her fists, nails digging into her palms, grounding herself. Slowly, the movement faded. The river stilled. She exhaled, relief washing over her as she forced a smile, just as a guest approached with a compliment. Hold it together. Just a few more hours. But deep down, she knew the truth. Her abilities weren't just growing stronger. They were tied to her emotions. And she was losing control. Across the room, a guest murmured in disbelief. "I could have sworn the cat's tail just wagged." Another gasp followed. Did that bird just fly to the other side of the canvas? Ella's stomach twisted. She needed to master her abilities fast. The hunger, it happened overnight. One evening, the whole world was bathed in the rich hues of a setting sun. The sky painted in oranges and purples. The next morning, everything had turned gray. Not just dull or faded, color itself was gone. The trees, flowers, ocean, even people's skin and eyes had become mere variations of black, white, and gray. It was if reality had been drained, leaving behind a lifeless, monochrome wasteland. At first, scientists tried to explain it as some anomaly in human vision, a mass hallucination, an unknown pollutant in the air. But when they dissected plants and animals, their tissues were colorless at a molecular level. Screens, paintings, dyes. Nothing could produce a single shade beyond the grayscale spectrum. Then, people started disappearing. It wasn't like normal vanishing. There were no signs of struggle, no footprints leading away. One moment, someone was there, and the next, gone, like they had been erased from existence. The only thing left behind was a faint, smudged shadow on the ground, as though they had begun to dissolve before vanishing entirely. Escher had been watching it happen for weeks. He kept a notebook where he marked every missing person in his town, tracking patterns, trying to make sense of it all. At first, the patterns were unclear, just a slow trickle of missing people. The painters, the poets, the dreamers, those who had dared to whisper about color, to grieve its absence, were the first to go. Then it was the children who still dreamed in color, their small voices describing the impossible. A sky that wasn't gray, a sun that burned gold. Each one disappeared without a sound, leaving behind nothing but that eerie, smudged shadow. Now, Escher could feel it watching him, lingering just at the edge of his vision, a weight in the air that pressed against his skull, cold fingers at the nape of his neck. The more he thought about color, the stronger it became, like a slow, suffocating whisper wrapping around his mind. He had a theory, but it curdled in his stomach like rot. What if whatever took the color away was still here? And what if it didn't want anyone to remember what had been lost? Escher kept his theory to himself. He had seen too many people vanish after speaking too freely. But in the quiet of his apartment, under a single flickering bulb, he scrawled his thoughts into his notebook, pressing the pencil so hard against the paper that the tip snapped. That night, sleep came in restless waves. Dreams of golden sunrise, of green forests and sapphire oceans, flickered behind his closed eyelids. Something else lurked there too, a whispering void pressing at the edges of his vision, a presence that noticed him. He woke with a start, heart pounding. The bulb above him flickered more erratically now, casting sharp, jumping shadows across the walls. Then he saw it, a smudge, one of those gray stains on the floor near his desk. It hadn't been there before. It looked like the others, the ones left behind by the vanished. But he was still here. Escher reached out a shaking hand, brushing his fingers over the smudge. Ice shot up his arm. His breath hitched, his vision wavered, and for a split second, he saw something, a figure, a shifting mass of darkness standing in the corner of his room, featureless, faceless, but watching him, waiting. The moment passed, and he yanked his hand away. The thing was gone, but he knew it had been real. He flipped open his notebook with trembling fingers. If he was right, he had limited time before it came for him. He needed answers. Somewhere out there, someone knew the truth. Someone who was still alive. Escher didn't sleep again that night. He sat at his desk, staring at the smudge on his floor, waiting for it to move. It didn't. But something else did. A creak in the hallway. Slow, deliberate, his breath hitched. He lived alone. The sound came again, closer this time. A dragging shuffle, like bare feet sliding across wooden floors. Escher reached for the nearest object, a rusted letter opener. Pathetic, but it was something. He moved toward the door, silent, his pulse slamming against his ribs. He pressed his ear against the wood. Nothing. Then a whisper. Not words, just a sound. Something wrong. Like wind whistling through hollow bones. Escher yanked the door open. The hallway was empty, but the walls weren't. Long, uneven handprints streaked the wallpaper, dragging downward, as if something had clawed its way along. The air was thick, pressing, like he had stepped into a vacuum where sound and light had begun to fold in on themselves. Then he noticed the door at the end of the hall. Apartment 203. No one had lived there for months, but now it was open. A sliver of darkness yawned beyond the threshold, impossibly black, deeper than shadow. Something was inside, watching, waiting. Fingers slowly emerged from the darkness, wrapping around the edge of the door, not quite human. Too long, too thin, curling around the edge of the door. The skin wasn't just gray. It was wrong, shifting like static, like it wasn't fully real. The fingers twitched. Escher bolted. He didn't stop until he was outside, breath steaming in the cold air. The city was dead silent, buildings looming in their gray-scale monotony. But something had changed. The streetlights flickered, and for the first time since the color vanished, Escher saw something new. In the distance, above the rooftops, high in the night sky, a single, pulsing red light, the first color he had seen in weeks. And deep in his gut, Escher knew it was calling to him. He had two choices: run the other way and pretend he never saw the red light, or go to it. Every survival instinct screamed for the first option, but something deep inside, something primal, pulled him toward the second. It was the first color in a world that had been stripped bare. It was wrong, unnatural, but it was something. His feet were already moving. The city was eerily empty. Cars abandoned at intersections, their windshields coated in dust. Storefronts remained open, shelves half-stocked, as if people had simply walked away from their lives. The red light pulsed, steady and slow, coming from the tallest building in the city, the old communications tower. As Escher approached, he felt it before he heard it. A deep, low hum, subsonic, just beneath the range of hearing, but strong enough to feel in his bones. The street lights flickered in time with it. A shadow moved up ahead. Escher froze. A figure stood in the middle of the street, facing away. Motionless, the man, or what had been a man, wore a tattered suit. Its fabric faded to gray like everything else. Something was wrong with him. His arms hung too long at his sides, limp and lifeless. His head tidled slightly, as if listening to something Escher couldn't hear. And then, slowly, the man's neck snapped back, bending at an impossible angle. His face. Escher sucked in a deep breath. The man's eyes were gone. Just smooth, gray skin where they should have been. His mouth hung open in a silent, gaping O, like something had hollowed him out from the inside. And then, without moving his lips, a whisper slid from his throat. You shouldn't see the color. Escher ran. His breath came in short, sharp gasps, feet pounding the pavement. The communications tower loomed ahead. The hum grew louder. The street lights died. Darkness swallowed everything except for the red glow above, pulsing faster now, more urgent. Something was chasing him. He could hear it, a skittering, impossibly fast, limbs scraping against the pavement. The tower doors were open. Escher threw himself inside and slammed them shut. Silence. His heartbeat thundered in his ears. He took a shaky breath, turning to face the interior. The building was empty. An old stairwell wound up in the dark, leading to the roof. The red glow pulsed from above. There was a voice. Not from behind the door, not the stairwell, but from inside the room. A whisper, slithering through the air like a breath against his ear. You were not supposed to remember, Escher finally realized. The red light hadn't been calling him. It had been warning him. He turned slowly, his breath shallow. The room was empty, but the whisper had been right next to him. The red light pulsed above, faster now. Urgent. He forced himself forward, gripping the stairwell railing. He had to reach the top. He had to see whatever was waiting for him. The climb was endless. The hum grew louder, vibrating through the walls. His vision swam, his skin prickling like something unseen was brushing against him. The climb ended at a door, rusty, slightly ajar. Beyond it, the red glow bled into the darkness. Escher pushed it open. He walked out onto the roof. The city stretched out below, dad and colorless. At the center of it all, perched on the tower's antenna, like a grotesque, broken thing, whatever it was not a machine. It was alive, a shifting, writhing mass. Its surface pulsing with sickly veins of red light. It had no defined shape, no eyes or mouth, just an undulating, wet mass of twisting tendrils, each one ending in something horrifying. Faces, not full heads, just faces, half-formed, stretched, and distorting, mouths open in silent screams. They flickered in and out of existence, as if trapped. Escher knew, deep in his bones, these were the ones who had vanished. Not erased, not destroyed, absorbed. His stomach twisted, and his knees nearly gave out. The red light flared, and suddenly he remembered. The color hadn't been taken. It had been consumed, and the thing was still hungry. A shadow loomed from behind him. Escher turned just in time to see the eyeless man from the street standing in the doorway. But he was different now. His face was melting, the edges smearing like wet charcoal, his features slipping away. The man took a step forward, then another, and with each step, his body blurred, losing detail, like he was being erased in real time. "Join us," the voices whispered. Escher staggered back. The fleshy mass of faces quivered, responding to the movement, its tendrils stretching toward him. The eyeless man, if he even was a man anymore, took another step forward. His form blurred, warping like wet ink, his face melting away completely. Escher tried to run, but something grabbed his ankle. Ice shot up his leg as a tendril snaked up his calf. It wasn't solid, not exactly. It was like touching static, buzzing, shifting, eating away at him the moment it made contact. A dark gray substance was oozing out of his skin like ink in water. He kicked, thrashed, clawed at the rooftop, but it was pulling him in. More tendrils lashed out, latching onto his arm, his torso, his face, cold, deep, endless. His vision swam. Shadows moved at the edges of his sight. His skin tingled as something deeper than pain rippled through him, like he was being unraveled. The voices rose in a distorted, guttural chorus. "Join us," Escher gasped. And for the briefest moment, he saw everything. Not just the city, not just the rooftop. Beyond, the world before color disappeared, and the thing that had come before that, something vast, endless, watching, waiting. That fleshy thing of faces wasn't the beginning. It was only a fragment of something much worse. The red light pulsed one final time. Then it went out. Silence. Darkness. A whisper rippling through the void. Now we are free. The portrait of silence. Clara was 35 when she inherited the crumbling countryside estate of Château des Ombres. a legacy from a great aunt she barely remembered. The news arrived like an omen, slicing through the fog of her post-heartbreak haze, offering an escape from the echoes of a life she no longer wished to inhabit. The estate was a relic of another time, its walls cloaked in dust and draped with faded, peeling wallpapers. But amid the fading grandeur, one thing stood out: a painting in the dining room, unnervingly lifelike, depicting a woman in 17th century attire. A woman who looked eerily like Clara herself, dark eyes too knowing, a face both foreign and familiar. She reached out without thinking, tracing her fingers over the delicate oil strokes. A chill seeped into her skin. She had never been the type to have doppelgangers or be mistaken for someone else. Yet, as she stared at the unsettling realism of the portrait, she wondered, was her face simply ordinary or disturbingly unique? At first, she dismissed the unease. She attributed the odd sensations, the dizziness, the light-headed drift she felt in the dining room, to exhaustion or stress. The house was ancient, creaking with history, and her rational mind clung to explanations. But as weeks passed, the feeling intensified. The air in that room thickened. Her unease grew stronger every time she walked by the portrait. The painting seemed to shift when she wasn't looking. A flicker in the eyes, a whisper of movement in the curls of painted hair. And at night, as she started hearing murmurs in the darkness, indecipherable and persistent, she began to fear that she was truly losing her mind. She sought answers, but the staff who had served her great-aunt Serafina knew little. The painting had always been there, an intrinsic part of the house. Frustrated, Clara turned to Serafina's belongings, rummaging through drawers and cupboards until she found an old, leather-bound notebook buried in a wooden chest. She flipped through brittle pages filled with lists and recipes until a single entry stopped her cold. She waits in the canvas. She watches. That night, a storm raged. Rain lashed against the windows, and the wind howled through the halls. Sleep was impossible. The words from Serafina's notebook burned behind her eyes. Before she knew it, she was standing before the painting, breathless, pulse hammering. She reached out, fingers trembling, and scratched at the surface. The paint peeled away in thin layers, revealing another portrait beneath. The same elaborate clothing, the same pose, but the face was different. A stranger's. She could swear the figure in the painting smiled. Briefly, impossibly. The grin was too wide, stretching just beyond the limits of the face. Too sudden, as if it had flickered into existence rather than emerged naturally. A grotesque mimicry of human expression. She blinked rapidly, her breath catching, as though clearing her vision might erase the horror. When she looked again, the The smile was gone. A wave of nausea hit her. Staggering back, she felt a weakness grip her limbs. Panic drove her to action. At dawn, she reached out to an art historian she found online. Dr. Theodore Valls arrived at Château des Ombres 2 days later. He was a man of careful precision, his salt and pepper hair constantly pushed back, as if keeping stray thoughts in place. His initial response to her frantic message had been one of polite disinterest, until he saw the attached image. He recognized the woman at once. Isabella de Loria. By morning, he was at Château des Ombres, his presence sharp against the house's faded grandeur. "This is Alessandro di Rossi's work," he murmured, eyes narrowing in fascination. "An original. But this isn't possible." "What isn't possible?" Clara's voice was taut. He turned to her with a tense expression. Isabella was the only daughter of a powerful aristocratic family from southern Europe. She was painted by nearly all the great artists of her time. She was around 14 when she first posed for a portrait and vanished at age 22. No one knows exactly what happened to her, though there are many tales. But here, he continued, she looks older, much older. Clara led him to the torn fragments of the topmost layer, revealing the face that had been painted over. She looked a lot like me, she whispered, words feeling absurd even as she begged them. Her voice wavered, caught between disbelief and a creeping certainty she wished she could ignore. Dr. Valls exhaled sharply. The painting was altered, but why? And by whom? As they dug into history, the truth unfurled like a nightmare. The tale of Isabella's disappearance had long been attributed to a commoner's obsession. A man who had watched her from the shadows, consumed by an infatuation that festered into madness. When she refused his advances, he took her. She was hidden away, tortured, broken. Then she vanished. Her body was never found, Dr. Valse said, running a hand through his hair. But if this painting was done later, if Di Rossi painted her again, aged, changed, then... He hesitated. Then he must have known what became of her, Clara finished. Days of relentless research followed. They sifted through forgotten archives, scoured letters written in fading ink, and pieced together fragments of records long buried in the estate's library. Dr. Valtz reached out to colleagues, historians, and experts in restoration. It was in an obscure 17th century art treatise that they found mention of a certain Di Rossi portrait. One never exhibited, one whispered about in hushed tones, rumored to hold something more than just pigment and canvas. There was never a commoner lurking in the shadows. The story had been a fabrication, a convenient myth. In truth, Di Rossi had never been commissioned to paint Isabella. He had offered his services for free, captivated by the chance to immortalize such a remarkable face. An unusual gesture for an artist of his stature. His fascination began as artistic admiration, but soon it twisted into something else. He became obsessed, haunted by her beauty, unable to capture it to his satisfaction. When Isabella sat for him, the proximity consumed him. He had to be near her. He had to possess her. She was never seen again. Several years later, Isabella succumbed to the horrors she endured in De Rossi's grip. Unable to let her go, he took her blood and mixed it with his red paint, binding her essence to the canvas. He had painted her into permanence, attempting to capture what was left of her before it faded completely. The painting had fed on those who gazed too long, who felt its pull. A cycle of replacement, over and over. Clara felt the truth settle deep in her bones. Dr. Valls turned to her, something dark flickering in his gaze. We must destroy it. They worked beneath the shroud of midnight, the flickering firelight casting restless shadows against the walls. The painting resisted, its surface trembling, as if something within fought desperately to hold on. Flames licked at the edges, hesitating, as if repelled. Then, with a sudden burst, the fire consumed the canvas, curling the centuries-old paint into ash. A wave of energy rippled through the room, dense, suffocating. And then, a scream, high, raw, inhuman, tore through the air, reverberating through the walls before fading into an eerie silence. Silence. A faint shimmer lingered in the air, barely perceptible, as if resisting the finality of destruction. For a fleeting moment, Clara thought she saw the embers pulse. Not with fire, but with something else she couldn't explain. The house exhaled. The weight pressing against Clara's chest lifted. When the last ember died, only ash remained. Chad, Leah and Dave arrived early at Chateau des Ombres, barely containing their excitement at finally purchasing their dream home. By the time the real estate agent arrived and began unlocking the heavy front doors, they had already taken in the surrounding land, giddy with possibility. They had heard about the disappearance of the previous owner, a woman named Clara. The house had been unoccupied since. Eagerly, they explored the dim hallways, the grand staircase, the candlelit chandeliers. Then, in the dining room, they stopped. There, above the fireplace, hung an old portrait. A woman in 17th century attire, hands folded neatly in her lap. Her eyes were dark and deep, her expression impossibly lifelike. Leah frowned, tilting her head. Something about the portrait unsettled her. Not fear, but familiarity, a strange tug in her gut, a whisper of recognition just beyond reach. That's strange. She looks a bit like... She stopped, heart hammering. How exquisite. The woman in the painting did look a lot like Leah, they both agreed, and for the briefest moment, she swore she saw the lips part, forming a sudden, unnatural smile. Behind them, the door clicked shut. The mysterious painting, after pushing back from its gate, the Swiss Air midday flight to New York moved slowly through a light snow flurry to its designated runway. The first-class cabin was less than half full. The passenger in 1A was pleased there was no one opposite. A smiling cabin crew offered him a glass of champagne. He declined, asking for double single malt. He thought about the voicemail, a somewhat guarded call, coming from someone he hadn't spoken to in 15 years. What drove his final response was the email attachment that followed. He'd tried retuning the call, but it went to voicemail. He sensed something was wrong. He'd barely had time to return to his apartment from where he'd been staying, find his passport, pack a new bag, and take his car service to the airport. Something was telling him missing the flight was not an option. Philippe Abano was an internationally recognized art specialist, having spent 35 years researching the French Impressionists, a group of artists whose collective works, long after their passing, at auction, would shake the art world to its foundations. As with many famous artists, there were finished canvases, although documented, which had never been located. The Nazi art plunder, which began in Germany in 1933, contributed to the loss of artworks across Europe. The French Impressionists were not exempt from this pillage. 48 hours previous, Marie Le Pen was an art restorer. She worked almost exclusively for the Metropolitan Museum of Art, specializing in the restoration of damaged watercolors. On occasion, she did private restoration. With the museum's knowledge, she'd taken a call from a person representing a Mr. Retzlaff, saying she'd been recommended by her superior at the museum as someone to inspect a damaged watercolor he possessed. Marie, who loved her work, agreed to view the painting. She agreed a time the following day. Mr. Retzlaff would send a car. Very swish, she thought. After offloading her bags from the limousine sent for her, she looked around. The street was amazing. Narrow with private residences, no commercial properties. The houses all appeared to be of similar build, 5 or 6 floors above ground, with basements or walk-downs. Every property was maintained like new. Flowers and trees adorned the street. There was no garbage and no graffiti. The residence they stopped in front of was impressive, with red brick and huge floor-to-ceiling windows, edged with carved stone. At roof level, gargoyles peered down, surveying the scene. This was a part of New York most people would never see. Amazing. She followed the driver up the marble steps. He pulled on the brass handle and returned to the car. A man wearing a bow tie and black trousers answered. "Yes, madam?" he inquired. "I'm Marie Le Pen. I believe you're expecting me?" She smiled. "We are indeed, madam," the stern-faced man replied. The entrance hall was huge. She could smell timber and brass polish. The black and white checkered tiled floor was straight out of an English TV series. The doors leading off the foyer were all closed. A majestic, sweeping staircase held sway over the entrance. Huge brass vases, once filled with flowers, stood empty either side of the entrance. Apart from the electric light, the only modern consideration was a mechanical elevator. "Please," the man gestured, "follow me." They entered the elevator, along with her baggage. Marie watched as the man pressed 5. The door closed, and they began their ascent. On the 5th floor was another vestibule. This one had more polished timber and huge windows onto the street below. "This way." He gestured, then walked along a long corridor before he opened a large double door into what looked like a series of smaller spaces. If Marie hadn't had complete faith in her boss, she'd have been scared. At one side of the room, a man sat, straight-backed, with silver-gray hair. She guessed at least late 80s, wearing a green corduroy smoking jacket. He stood. She could smell cigar smoke. "Thank you for coming. I'm Peter Retzlaff. Fact is, Miss Le Pen, I need an expert opinion as to a certain painting that is in my possession. Should I, or should I not, restore it? Your superior at the Met spoke most highly of you." Marie saw several large art tables, specialist seats, and an array of instruments, all designed specifically for art restoration. She was gobsmacked. There had to be $1 million in equipment and instruments, brand new, some still in their original packaging, just sitting there. The old man waved his hand, and the valet unlocked a large steel cabinet with racks of what looked to Maria like canvases, painted canvases in various stages of decomposition. Strange, she thought. He slid one of the racks out and removed a painting, a watercolor that Maria recognized. After putting on her smock and gloves, examined the item more closely. Behind her, a phone rang. The valet took a cell phone from his pocket and listened, then said something softly to the old man. They steeped away to the side of the room, out of earshot. Maria continued looking at the canvas, heavily water-damaged with a once grand frame that also appeared flawed. She was about to make some preliminary notes into her phone. As she moved around the table, a splash of red caught her eye. The steel cabinet, which held the damaged painting, was open on one side. What she saw made her heart stand still. It was a large canvas of what appeared to be small wooden bridge over water in a garden. Although no expert, she'd seen enough examples of French impressionistic work to know this could be one. Marie quickly turned her phone to camera, taking 2 quick shots, only to be interrupted by raised voices. The old man was saying something to the valet in what sounded like German, who dashed past her, securing the door to the cabinet, ending her view. She said nothing, returning to the recorder in her phone, her head down, trying to appear as though she was concentrating. The old man looked suspiciously at her, said nothing. She could feel his eyes. My God, what have you just seen? She asked herself. Maria spent the next 2 hours making notes and photographing the damage. She agreed to return the following day with her recommendations and estimates, should she consider it restorable. Retzlaff agreed, giving her a copy of a providence document relating to the painting, which she would need to study. He told her he would send a car for her at an agreed time. She shook his hand and returned to the waiting limousine. The previous 2 hours did not sit well with her. Quite why, she couldn't say. The images of the red canvas wouldn't leave her. The storm had hit with a vengeance. Sudden spring rain washing the roadways, reminding New Yorkers summer was not far away. The crowded eateries on the streets of the East Village were suddenly deserted, sending outside diners scrambling for shelter inside. From her small single-bed apartment off McDougal Street, above a drugstore, Maria sat looking at the 2 images she downloaded from her camera. The room was quiet, save for the rhythm of the rain tapping at her window. On the larger screen, she could see more clearly the image she'd snapped earlier. The images were very much French impressionistic, of the late 19th or early 20th century. She could see the attempt to produce work inspired by real life. It was revolutionary. French impressionist artists rejected classical subject matter in favor of modernity, seeking to produce works that represented their current circumstances and environments. The more she looked, the more she was convinced. It was what she suspected. My God, she exclaimed. Could it be a Monet, hidden in a steel cabinet in a residence on the Upper West Side? It would explain the old man's annoyance at the cabinet being left open, particularly in the presence of a third party who just happened to be an art restoration expert. Maria took stock, pouring another glass of wine, wondering what she should do next. She thought about the man who had mentored her 15 years ago at Switzerland's largest art museum, the Kunsthaus Zurich, Philippe Abano. If anyone could make sense on what she had seen, he could. She'd not had any contact with Philippe for over a decade. Now he worked in a private capacity, advising galleries and writing books on the subject of French art, in particular, French Impressionism. His web page provided email and phone contact details. Maria thought carefully as how she should frame the call without identifying the object. Before she made the call, she uploaded the 2 photographs into a separate folder, attaching it to the email address she had for Philippe Abano. Suspecting the call would go to voicemail, she'd prepared a statement. At 10:30 p.m., she made the call, voicemail. She introduced herself, telling him of her current position at the Metropolitan Museum of Art, reminding him of their previous association, how she'd come to see what she'd seen, making no reference to a place or names, asking him for his opinion as to the images attached to the following email. Finishing the call, she pressed the send button. In the street below, a man sat in a black limousine, its wipers on intermittent sweeps, clearing the spitting rain, watching the illuminated small window above the drugstore. The Swiss Air flight gathered speed as it approached its takeoff point at Zurich Airport. Food and service trolleys rattled in their compartments as the aircraft's nose finally lifted into a gray, overcast day, the engines screaming. Philippe Abano was anxious and at the same time nervous, processing what he'd heard and seen in the previous few hours from one Maria Le Pen. Once the pilot had removed the seatbelt sign, he reached for his laptop. Putting on his glasses, began his search. East Village, New York City. Detectives Allison Maroney and her partner, Alex Sonny, stood at the open door of 1A, the apartment above the drugstore in the East Village. They flashed their shields at the uniform on the door. "What we got?" Allison inquired. The uniformed officers' badges read Lomax. "So, Officer Lomax, talk to us." The officer opened his notebook. A deceased female, found dead after we gained entry, possible gunshot. A Miss Holland. He gestured upwards. In 2A, reported a cat calling and scratching at the deceased's door. Apparently, the tenant regularly let her cat out when she came home from work, and then opened up when Pussy wanted in. Except, this time, no response. Cat keeps calling. She, Miss Holland, knocked. Nothing. As she heard the tenant arrive earlier that evening, she was reluctant to use the spare key she had, deciding to call 911 instead. We attended. The cat was still scratching at the door. Miss Holland gave us the key and witnessed a non-forced entry. We discovered the body and called the station, securing the scene. The ME, who arrived shortly after we called it in, puts time of death at around 8 p.m., give or take. Pulling on latex gloves, Detective Maroney knelt next to the body. ID? Yes. A wallet with cash and cards. A Maria Le Pen, 37, works at the Metropolitan Museum as an art restorer. ID shows her address as here. No driver's license. Detective Sonny moved carefully around the small room. Laptop? Cell? Neither, though I'm guessing she had both. They're chargers for each in here and in the bedroom. To recap, Sonny offers. No phone, no laptop, nothing taken except said cell and computer. Not a robbery then, and no sign of a forced entry. Sonny looked at his partner skeptically, shrugging his huge shoulders. Single gunshot between the eyes Small caliber, maybe, .32. Very professional. This look like a hit to me, Moroni offered. What do you think? After 3 hours of intense in-flight investigation, Philippe Abanot concluded it was a work by Claude Monet, albeit a later work. His once subtle transitions between shades became bolder and less precise, reflecting the challenges posed by his deteriorating eyesight. Monet's health struggles extended beyond his eyes, but his vision loss had the most direct impact on his art. And it was this Philippe Abanot recognized. He'd even found a reference to a non-catalogued work titled Pont sur l'eau bleue, Bridge over Blue Water. It was listed as one of several, being prepared by Monet's agent for exhibit in Paris. The exhibition never eventuated, the listed paintings unaccounted for. This was no great mystery for Armand. A number of explanations could be found. The artist withdrew the works, no reason given. An issue with the gallery, or sold before exhibition. The latter Armand found more convincing. It would also explain its anonymity for over a century, a private or family collection that may have suffered at the hands of the Nazi art plunder of the 30s. The whereabouts of many were still unknown. Either way, a mystery that may well be explained when he was to meet with Maria Le Pen in 4 hours' time. The night the engines died. The passengers of Flight 227 had just completed their meal. The cabin buzzed quietly with the clinking of silverware, an intermittent laugh, and the faint sound of rustling newspapers. Ordinary, routine sounds that masked behind the fragile facade of safety the horror that loomed just beyond. A stewardess laughed at a joke told by a passenger. A man in first class swirled his wine, enjoying the final sip. Suddenly, the intercom crackled to life, its static sibilant as a snake wrapping its way around the unwitting passengers. Then the voice, calm, deliberate, but with an unnatural solemnity, as if the captain was reading his own obituary. Ladies and gentlemen, this is your captain speaking. A moment of silence, just enough time for apprehension to germinate. I need to inform you of an issue. The words hung in the air, like an executioner's blade, poised to drop. The atmosphere changed instantly, as though an unseen presence had blown a chilly breath over the cabin, permeating every crack and crevice, wrapping around each traveler like invisible fingers clenching into a fist. Talk stalled, laughter died, to be succeeded by tense silence, as though the whole aircraft had sucked in its communal breath. The pilot went on, his voice strained with shame, but shaking under the burden of the nightmare he had created. In my hurry to leave Charles de Gaulle Airport, I failed to adequately monitor our fuel levels. A long, ragged pause ripped through the intercom, as though he was fighting to get out the words. I am ashamed to say this, I know I have let you all down. A hollow, uncomfortable silence fell over the cabin, choking the air like an invisible hand squeezing against each chest. The pilot paused to catch his breath before continuing, his voice cracking under the strain. Since we have been flying for a long time, our destination could be beyond our reach, since we may lack sufficient fuel to get there. The finality of his confession hit the passengers like a physical blow, drawing the air out of the cabin as though the aircraft itself had inhaled a gasp of horror. Some cried out loud. Others were paralyzed, their hands clenching armrests so hard that their knuckles whitened, as though through sheer force of will they could halt the unstoppable. A man grasped at his chest, his breathing shallow and fast, the first spasms of fear gripping his heart. The aircraft, once a sanctuary of order and technology, was now a prison of uncertainty. A metal coffin cutting through the emptiness at 500 miles an hour. Every flashing light, every jolt of turbulence seemed to foretell disaster. The whispers of fear were growing louder, building into a jarring buzz of terror. There were no strangers then, just the doomed, held together by the unspoken grasp of fear as they spoored toward some unknown destiny. And then another violent and convulsive shudder that ripped through the aircraft as if it had been seized in a death grip by an invisible hand. One of the engines coughed, sputtered, and died. The whole plane shuddered as if it had been hit by an invisible blow, a jolting crash of bone that threw passengers from their seats and sent loose objects flying through the cabin. The sickening lurch sent drinks crashing, trays falling to the floor, and overhead lockers bursting open, their contents spilling into the aisle. Gasps turned to screams as the cabin tilted, the aircraft going into an unnatural descent. The aircraft had already started to descend to New York, but now it was plummeting, no longer descending in a controlled manner, but spiraling out of control. The cabin lights flickered madly, casting crazed shadows on faces paralyzed with terror. The aircraft lurched violently, its damaged fuselage objecting to the stress. Oxygen masks dropped from the ceiling like ghostly apparitions, dangling inertly amidst the chaos. The cabin erupted into pandemonium. Screams of abject terror, cries for assistance, the raspy howls of those who recognized the inevitable. The night sky outside, once an endless expanse of stars and silence, now pressed in like the walls of a closing tomb. The vastness had turned suffocating, a cosmic void ready to consume them. Below, the earth was no longer a distant haze, but a giant, looming thing, reaching out to snatch them with an appetite that threatened to consume them. City lights unfurled like streaks of flame, oblivious to the souls above, speeding towards their fate. The altimeter ticked down at a remorseless pace. The aircraft was still too far from New York City. Its decreasing altitude, a grim countdown, without reprieve. There were no longer any alternative airports, no deviations, just the relentless descent, and the understanding that hope was running through their fingers like sand in a gale. The cockpit was a maelstrom of confusion. Alarms screaming, warning lights flashing like a dying pulse. The aircraft strained against gravity, shuddering so violently the control panels creaked. The first officer's white-knuckled fists held tight to the yoke, his forehead beaded with sweat. His voice, strained and almost lost in the din of automated warnings, sliced through the chaos. The second engine coughed, sputtered, and with a final agonizing splutter, died in silence. A jolting stillness filled the cockpit, broken only by the otherworldly shriek of wind whistling past the fuselage. It was the kind of stillness that felt unnatural, deafening in its absence of power. A stillness that presaged catastrophe. The aircraft, a marvel of controlled engineering, was now reduced to a huge metal husk, a crippled glider flying through the darkness. The control panels blacked out, their frantic warnings muted, as if even the plane itself had given up. The first officer's breath caught, his fists still gripped on the dead yoke, as if sheer willpower could urge power back into the engines. His eyes bulged wide, darting to the altimeter, its numbers free-falling with heart-stopping speed. The first officer's knuckles turned white on the throttle. We're dead stick. No thrust. The captain's mind reeled. We can glide this in. His voice, which he tried to keep steady, trembled. He was not sure. It seemed to take forever for the ram air turbine to deploy. Its little turbine opening up into the howling wind like a desperate, last gasp prayer to the emptiness. Inside the cabin, the flight attendants strode down the aisles with stiff formality, their faces drawn but determined, their voices, strained as they were, carried the authority of rehearsed command. "Brace for impact, please," one of them screamed, her voice hardly cutting through the noise. A few passengers complied at once, throwing themselves forward, arms clasped around their heads. Others were paralyzed, their brains locked in denial, unable to comprehend the unimaginable. One man struggled with his seatbelt, shaking so hard he couldn't locate the buckle. A woman clutched the armrest so hard her fingernails cracked on the plastic. The emergency lights strobed feebly, casting eerie shadows that twitched on faces contorted in terror. People shrieked, a loud, grating cacophony of terror. Some embraced their loved ones. Others slapped hands over their faces, screams muffled by the deafening quiet of the plummeting plane. A flight attendant, holding onto the back of a seat for balance, mouthed frantic reassurances no one heard. The aircraft vibrated heavily, the fuselage complaining in protest to the strain of its powerless plummeting. Unsecured items flew around the cabin, bouncing off chairs and people. Each passing second seemed impossibly long, as if the fabric of time itself had rent asunder under the threat of disaster. The captain gritted his teeth, his hands trembling over the controls. The glide of the plane was erratic, its path a hardly controlled plunge into the emptiness. The cockpit echoed with alarms, relentless, screaming their warnings in a cruel mockery of hope. Smoke from the failing systems wreathed through the dim light, the acrid scent of burning circuits searing his lungs. And then, out of the spinning darkness, out of the turmoil, he saw it, a faint, glimmering glow in the distance, cutting through the blackness like a sliver of salvation. New York City, runway lights, a fragile lifeline quivering in the fog, teasingly distant. But could they reach it? Or was it an illusion, a mirage in the final few seconds before extinction? The first officer's breath caught, his heart racing in his throat, as his eyes locked onto the gleaming light ahead. We might make it, after all, he whispered, his voice trembling with a faint, desperate hope, as though saying the words aloud could make it so. But beneath his words was the unspoken fear, the knowledge that they were still at the mercy of gravity, the wind, and fate itself. But they hadn't reached there yet. The trees rose like shattered black shapes, their gnarled branches reaching out greedily toward the plane, as if to pull it down into nothingness. He had seconds. His grasp of the yoke was vice-like, his knuckles white under the faint glow of the flickering gauges. The plane bucked in an irregular motion that was wild, turbulence and gravity resisting every movement. His heart throbbed in his head, but his mind was fixed in steel-sharp concentration. The first officer took a deep breath. Hold it just a little longer. The branches on top of the trees were closing in. The runway lights continued to flicker ahead, teasingly near, yet impossibly distant. They were on the brink of salvation or doom. One last risk, one last wild maneuver. With a violent tug on the controls, he went for the gap. The tops of the trees scraped the underside of the plane, ripping at the undercarriage. The sound of metal on wood screamed through the cabin, and then a deafening, bone-crushing bang. A merciless cacophony of screaming metal and bursting steel, as if the heavens themselves had fallen. The force of impact vibrated through the fuselage, seats ripped from their mounts, bodies tossed around like dolls. Flames licked along the broken edges of the aircraft, illuminating the darkness in an otherworldly, flickering glow. A choking cloud of smoke rolled through the wreckage, its acrid grip tightening around every strangling breath of air. The ground trembled with aftershocks, debris still creaking and groaning in the burning wreckage. Then, silence. A fragile, unnatural silence, shattered only by the crackles of fire and the rough, strained breathing of those who remained alive. There were cries from the rubble, some in the distance, some close, bare with pain and shock. The reek of smoldering petrol clung to the air, a bitter reminder of how close they had come to complete destruction. And when the smoke finally cleared, the twisted remains of the plane lay stretched out like a broken, tortured thing, its bare skeleton scarcely discernible as the great ship that it once was. And yet, despite all the odds, everyone was alive, poised between the salvation and oblivion, balanced on the brink of an impossible second chance. The captain, bruised and inexplicably alive, gasped as he released his harness, his sweat-soaked fingers shaking with aftershock. His ribs throbbed with searing pain, every breath a burning reminder of the savagery they'd just survived. He hauled himself up, vision fading, the metallic flavor of blood in his mouth. The debris lay before him like the scene of a nightmare. Flames licking across scorched metal. The bitter taste of fuel and smoke choking the air. Remote, tortured screams resounded in his mind, together with the ringing that had not stopped since impact. His head reeled, replaying every mistake, every warning he had ignored. The sign of his failure weighed upon him, more oppressive than the wreckage that enclosed him. He had made a mistake that should have killed everyone. Rambling rose. "I'm late!" Life always passes over me. "I'm late" is just another phrase for situation normal. Absolutely fluffed up. "Did you put in your application, Rosie?" An unnecessary question, probably motivated by a sense of duty. I give my usual frown and grimace, a sigh, an "I don't care, but will try to appear concerned" look. The office crew is sniffing each other out. They're silently musing on the expected unfairness, their anticipated realization of failure, judging nepotism or brown-nosing from each participant. Jones, from service and repair, has been studying his policies. Gretel has finished her Certificate 4 in admin. Will is confident and also disgruntled because he has been at the WAM desk for 3 years and feels he deserves the promotion. Georgia has made coffee for the PA to the director every day for the last 2 months, and today has homemade chocolate brownies. The bright young things wander confidently, secretive, holding clipboards, adjusting their ties and hair clips. It's a yearly raise of $20K, and not to be ignored. But I most studiously ignored it. The primitive yearning for some freedom has snared its unrealistic teeth right into my IT life. Hell, I don't even know what the word means. I haven't read Jack Kerouac, but sense that this might be one of life's moments when Kerouac isn't just a writer. Kerouac is where I want to be. Pens, wads of reports, tea bags, coffee bags, a banana already populated with several tiny Drosophilas. Laptop charger, some screwed up piece of something, possibly a chocolate wrapper. Everything into the locker. Close the door tightly before anything falls out. There may be war once the position is filled. It's a late winter, but June in the Highlands is starkly beautiful, misty, haunting even. The trains have all left, and I park my red Subaru into a free parking lot. The sky is an empty gray slate, and the new moon barely lights the smooth concrete platform. I walk carefully to the graveled exit, look into the darkness, and start walking beside highway number 1. Nobody would know if I am man or woman, as my hair is tucked into a black beanie. Nobody will try to stop for me, and I swagger, trying to look dangerous and unwelcome. My wind jacket is old and barely covers my hips. My tracky Dax, gray, also old. Just another vagabond itinerant wandering the roads. I step purposefully, too quickly, and slow myself. The journey, not the destination, I say. The crunch of the gravel beneath my rubber-soled gym shoes is satisfying. Each step releases its perfume of rain, oil, and petrol. I breathe its nourishment like a 4-year-old who has escaped from the front yard onto the street for the first time. A dog howls and then barks, and the cars gradually dissipate. At some point, I realize I am alone, even from any flow of traffic. It is 11 p.m. I have been walking for 3 hours. I breathe even more deeply. The air has chilled. A faint silhouette of bushland lines the horizon, and a small window twinkles somewhere on a hillside. As I walk, this small, friendly light disappears behind a ridge. A kookaburra announces something. It's time we all just went to sleep now. I will keep walking. I will keep walking until I want to stop. More hours pass by as I contemplate the stiffness in my calves, the ache in my arches, and the spots where my jacket does not cover my legs properly. The sky has started to reveal stars, hundreds of different sized lights, satellites drifting through them. Betelgeuse and Sirius, Pleiades, Orion's belt, familiar sky landmarks that are warm to the touch. Homey reminders that I am not completely out of my mind. Excitement suddenly makes me look up and revel in the starry expanse. Some loose barbed wire behind a ditch at the side of the road looks promising, and I duck through it. I am starting to feel tired. An irrigation ditch with straight sides has been carved into the bare landscape, its straight sides starkly incongruent with the rocky outcrops and overgrazed land. A breeze has started up, and snow must have fallen in the mountains as the wind is cold. I lie carefully in the ditch, careful not to wet my shoes, marveling at the convenience of a raised bed, however hard. Staring into the skies, I think, this is where I should have an epiphany. But what will it be? I am a traveler, a nomad, a gypsy on the road. This is where enlightenment and realization comes from. The cold is biting deep, and I cover spots alternatively when the pain gets too much. First my knees, then my torso, but never everything all at once. Looking imploringly into the stars, I let all sense of self leave me, my mind floating into that vast canopy. The cold makes me feel a bit sorry for myself, and I feel not just alone, but lonely. I think I slept, my icy dreams interspersed with awkward rearranging of the useless wind jacket. The romance of my zero-gravity bed, just a cold, hard slant with pointy pebbles pressing into my back and hips, a crackle of nearby dried grass, the swoosh of saltbush being brushed past, a movement so close that I lose my breath in terror. I jolted awake. Was this near where those hitchhikers had disappeared? What if there was a man with a hatchet studying me, waiting for me, a gun, an intent to harm me? My heart was in my ears, and I breathed noiselessly, trying to stop breathing so fast. I sink into the hard clay. Just another boulder. Nobody here. After a half hour of immobile silence, it seemed that the killer would have moved by now. But I slowly lifted my chin to survey what was behind me, above the ditch, expecting any moment my life could be taken from me. A snort in my ear, and a scuffle from all around where my head lay. A dozen sheep were startled from where they had been staring at me. They stood back, gazing at the intruder, and slowly backed off. I was safe. The sheep were my friends, my protectors. They trotted away quickly now that it was obvious what this warm, soft-bodied thing was. I stayed the next 2 days in a rented room, happily proud of the adventure. I even called Jones and congratulated him on his new interest in company policy. Surely this point will be noted by management as a sign he is a contender in the offing. We agreed that it was a done deal. Georgia's coffee making was obsequiously good, and she was probably sleeping with the director anyway. I comforted Gretel and said she was far prettier than Georgia and had ethics. which Georgia patently did not. I put my hand on Will's shoulder and smiled. He'd get there soon, and was deserving. I might even explain my journey to Jones one day, but thought the better of it. I don't think he would understand. I barely could make sense of it myself, so today's story has come to an end. Or perhaps it never really ended. There are mysteries still there, questions still unanswered, and sometimes things that seem to only exist in stories can creep into reality in unexpected ways. Are you sure that when you turn off the sound, everything around you will still be normal as before? Or is there something watching you? Either way, always remember that these are just stories, or at least we want to believe that they are. If you like moments of suspense, tension, and breathlessness, don't forget to follow me so you don't miss the next stories. And next time, when you come back, make sure you are ready, because what awaits you may be even scarier than you thought. See you again if you still have the courage to continue listening.